All right, so I just wanted to give a short lecture on the Great Pyramid as an object. It's a really good object to look at for this period of time we're looking at, which of course is the Old Kingdom. As you know, this is called the Pyramid Age, so it makes sense to actually look at this particular object. Just to give you a bit of information on the size, so this pyramid was massive. So 438 feet high, 690 feet at the base. So 690 feet by 690 feet. And just to give you a bit of comparison, I've given you the size of a football field, which is 360 by 160. So this is a pretty massive building. I looked up some information on the pyramid. There's about 2,300,000 blocks. The average weight is about 2.5 tons. And we know the ones at the bottom weigh much, much more. And there's a really good book called The History of Ancient Egypt, or A History of Ancient Egypt. And that particular author mentions that looking at the number of blocks that were needed, the pharaoh at that time was Khufu. This is Khufu's pyramid. I ruled for 23 years. Every year they had to take out 100,000 blocks, if that's how it was done. If it was done every single year, starting when he started. This comes down to 280 blocks a day, or one every 2 minutes in the daylight. So this is a really good way to think about the size of this pyramid and the amount of human effort that it took to build something like this. This is a shot showing the Great Pyramid, and let me just get my pen here. So this is when we're talking about Khufu. And then you've got Khafra's pyramid back here, and then you've got Menkaura's pyramid. Now it looks like Khafra's pyramid is taller. Now, of course, in this picture it is. The reason it's taller in the picture is because the bedrock is higher at that point. But if you take from the base to the tip, Khufu's pyramid is actually taller. This is an overhead view of those three pyramids. So here's the pyramid of Khufu. And you've got the mortuary temple, and then you've got this little walk out here. The Valley Temple would have been here, but as you can see, there's a modern village here. Here's the pyramid of Khafra. You've got the temple here. You've got the causeway out to the Valley Temple. And then same here with Menkaura's pyramid at the Valley Temple. Now, we looked at a workers' village that was over here in this particular area. Okay, this is a crosscut of the Great Pyramid. So you've got the entry chamber here, or entryway here. You've got this thing called the Grand Gallery. You've got a chamber called the Queen's Chamber, and then one called the King's Chamber. And in the lecture I talked about the overview of the Old Kingdom, I had mentioned these corbelled roofs, and that's what's going on here. You've got these giant slabs of stone built in, and then you've got this angled stone here. Now what that's doing is the weight of the pyramid is coming down on this, and these stones will press some of the force away from this chamber so it doesn't collapse. And then, I know this is probably a terrible slide to show you, but this is a shot of the Grand Gallery. So as you're walking up in this direction, these are those slabs I just talked about in terms of the roofing structure. And then you can see a couple shots from the Queen's, what they call the Queen's tomb, and then this subterranean room built into the pyramid. Another really interesting thing about the pyramid, and this is a case for lots of others, is that there are boats buried around the pyramids. And wood is not very common in Egypt, so a lot of this wood was gotten from trade. And what they ended up doing is taking these boats apart and burying them around the pyramid. And it's thought that this was done for religious reasons. So when the pharaoh dies, he would get in this boat and then sail off to the stars. And so these boats were all taken apart. And so this one, when it was found, was put back together. And you can see the size of it because this is a walkway. You can see a walkway here. So pretty amazing. And of course, that can tell you a bit about trade. It can tell you a bit about religion. So what can this Great Pyramid tell us about sustainability? Well, we've looked at or we will look at a workers' village on who put this Great Pyramid together. And it's thought that maybe 150,000 people total. So that's families of people living there, the workers themselves, all working on the pyramids. Now think about what you have to do to keep those people alive. They have to be fed. They have to have something to drink, probably beer. They have to be housed. And then don't forget that all those people who are working at the quarries. So that's all the same thing. They have to be fed, they have to be housed, they have to be watered. This was a massive, massive project, really at a state scale. Now, of course, all this food had to be shipped in. So all the grain that's being grown were all being collected through taxes. It's being grown on these religious estates and then shipped in to feed all of these people. And of course, one thing you really want to think about is what we could call the social justice aspect of this, which is the people who are working on this building. What kind of toll was this taking on them as they were quarrying the rock? And then you have to think about the whole process. They dig out the rock. They then shave it down to the right size. Then they move it. And then they do the final dressing or final fixing of the stone at the site. And then they move them up onto the pyramid to build it. There's a archaeologist called Zahi Hawass, who's a really amazing archaeologist, Egyptologist, who looked at some of the cemeteries that are surrounding these sites. And I've given you a quote here, and I've given you the link to this website down at the bottom. But you can, I'm not going to read this to you, but you can see degenerative arthritis through the spine, the lumbar region, and in the knees. You've got these skeletons showing that they did a massive amount of work. Now, this is no big surprise, but it's nice to have the archaeological science to show us that this was the case. They found lots of limb fractures, so arm and leg fractures. Some of these were healed, so what that means is they got a fracture. And remember, we looked at this a couple of weeks ago on skulls, where you could see where a fracture might occur, and then it will heal up, as opposed to a brand new fracture, say at the time of death. But there are examples of these fractures healing, and they probably went back to work. There's also examples of amputations. So this particular object, the Great Pyramid, can tell us quite a bit about the economy, especially agriculture. It can tell us about political control. It can tell us about religion. And of course, now we're finally getting into sort of the social justice aspect of actually looking at the bodies of the people who built these pyramids.